What's up, everybody, and welcome to episode 5 of Set the Tempo, the Toronto Tempo / WNBA podcast. I am Tyler Conium. First, you can follow me across all my socials down there at Tyler Conium. And finally, we can sort of start talking basketball and less business. Still a little bit of business to get to this week. We've got a couple topics, including the Cleveland expansion team that is coming. We've got some New York Liberty news. We can talk expansion draft, rookie salaries. But the CBA was ratified. On the Players Association side, it's expected that the ownership group will agree to that in the next 24 hours as well. And we can officially put this collective bargaining crud behind us because we have a season to start on May 8th. And it's March 24th. And we have an expansion draft. We have free agency. We have a WNBA draft. We have training camp. There's a lot to do between now and May the 8th when this season kicks off. And we don't know a whole lot. So much of the league is a free agent. And of course, as we get into, Toronto having a team, this will be, touch on WNBA news. I do want this to be a Toronto Tempo podcast / WNBA podcast. Right now, it's more of a WNBA podcast because, Toronto doesn't have any players. So what can you do? So in that sense, we'll kick today's shows off with the Cleveland, their upcoming WNBA expansion team. They're set to debut in 2028. So similar to how Toronto, their team was announced in 2024. They will start playing in 2026. Same deal with Cleveland under Cavaliers owner Dan Gilbert. They've just added 10 new investors. So there's a lot of money coming in, including Monarch Collective, which is interesting. It's their first WNBA investment, but they only invest in female sports. And so that's really interesting. It's really good for the league. And this is what, we actually saw sort of on the Tempo side. A lot of the investments and investors are coming from Serena Williams, from Sephora, which is a female-owned business. So it's nice that that is the way that that's going down. The expansion fee for Cleveland, along with upcoming teams in Detroit and Philadelphia, $250 million. So for context, when Toronto got a team, $50 million. 2 years ago, Larry Tannenbaum and his ownership group paid $50 million for the Toronto Tempo expansion team. That fee is now 5 times higher at $250 million. So if you want to invest in the Tempo or in the WNBA, it's getting to the point where, and look how the league's expanding. You're going to have 15 teams this season. You're going to jump to 18 once you've added Detroit, Cleveland, Philly. Obviously, you hope that the quality of basketball remains the same. That's sort of always the fear when you have rapid expansion, and not just women's sports, but sports in general. If you have too much rapid expansion, obviously your player pool diminishes a little bit. But obviously with the monetary investment, I know that women's sports is just growing, and we've seen some great basketball coming out of the women's side of March Madness, including a drumming by UConn last night. So that's interesting. Cleveland will play in Rocket Arena. They've sold 8,000 season tickets already. They're expected to name their team name and their branding this summer. So they actually had the Cleveland Rockers from 1997 to 2003, an original WNBA team. How cool is that name? The Cleveland Rockers. And I know it's named after the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame there, obviously, but kind of gives me shades of old WWF, Shawn Michaels and Marty Jannetty, the Rockers. That'd be pretty cool. So WNBA had only originally planned to add one expansion team, but demand has been so strong, they've added 3 between 2028 and 2030. And obviously on top of that, with the salary cap jumping from $1.5 to $7 million, thanks to the new CBA. So bottom line is investment is here, expansion is here, player salaries are exploding. This is sort of the ground. I want to call it the ground floor. The ground floor has been laid by all the women who have participated in the past, but the next chapter is definitely here. So it'll be interesting to see how that Cleveland group goes. So excited for that. And then next up, sort of as we talk about salaries, rising costs, the New York Liberty. So it's going to be interesting if super teams can still exist. We've seen it with Vegas. We've seen it recently with New York, with Sabrina and Ionescu, Brianna Stewart. And it'll be interesting, John Kell Jones. It'll be interesting to see the New York Liberty in particular. Can they keep those big three of Stewart, Jones, and Ionescu under the new CBA? So they've started doing the math and how many max players you can have. So all 3 of those players are eligible for the 1.4 Supermax deal. but then you've got a salary cap of 7 million, right? So with 1.5 million going to each of those players, you're looking at $4.5 million, over half of your salary cap going to just 3 players. So, that's obviously where it's going to be tricky for New York. We know in Vegas, they sort of solved that problem a little bit. Obviously, Asia Wilson's going to get the max there. So the Supermax takes up 20% of a team's cap, up from 16.5. So it's where you're going to see that middle class. Well, shocker, the middle class is getting squeezed out. You want to sign 3 Supermax, you're going to have to sign a bunch of minimum contracts with it. You're not going to be able to have a bunch of those middle of the road type players. So they might have to offer lower than max deals or spread it across over multiple years. For example, if Stewart, Jones, and Ionescu each made $1 million instead of the full Supermax, that would only take up 43% of the cap. So that's something that a lot of teams are eventually going to have to figure out, and it's in this whole new world, which is going to be interesting. Cap management is going to have to be such a crucial thing because minimum salaries have jumped up to around 300K. So, what is the price of winning? I guess you can ask. Are you going to have stars that want the Supermax because now the money's there? And what's interesting is because the salaries have jumped so much, like going from 100K to 1 million is already a 10x jump. So do they want that extra, 14x jump? And would not blame them if they do. But that would be the cost of all this team building. You have theoretically the opportunity to sign 3 Supermax deals, but at the expense of basically signing vet minimums across the board. So who wants to build a dynasty? And that's where it's going to be interesting to see, what do the Toronto Tempo do in this situation? Are they going to go after one of the bigger name free agents and offer a max deal right out of the gate? Because there aren't that many. I saw on the internet people, Tempo fans, already, they want to tank and do all this stuff and blah, blah. It's like, if you're already tanking in your first season, there's a big problem. And you have season ticket holders, you have new fans. If you start tanking right out of the gate, that could be trouble. Number 2, the league's not really big enough to tank. If you get in, and you don't know if you're going to have these super teams like the Liberty and the Aces next year. So the idea of tanking, I think, is crazy. I think there's also enough unique time. There's going to be enough bigger name free agents out there. You saw it with last year with the Valkyries. They were pretty good. Toronto could make a bit of a splash right away. And then that leads us into rookie salaries. And that's going to be a big difference this year as we start talking about the rookie salary jump. Because the number 1 pick in the upcoming 2026 draft will make a base salary of $500,000 this season. $520,000, $572,000, $646,000 over the next 3 years of their rookie, their 4 years of their rookie contract. So the rookie scale for the 2025 draftees is reduced by 4%, which that means Paige Beckers, who went first overall last year, will make 4% less than the second year of this deal in 2026. And that comes out to $499,000. But of course, under the old deal, Paige Beckers would have made just $80,000. And that number is going to jump to $499,000. So it's just interesting when you look at the most recent rookies and picks and what they're going to be eligible for, which is a fun example. Like, let's look at Caitlin Clark. Her 2025 salary was $78,066. That jumps in 2026 to $527,000. In 2027, she's eligible for a max deal. And then in 2028, she'll be eligible for that super max, which will presumably be increased by that point. So, and you look at Angel Reese last year, 2025, Angel Reese made $74,000. In 2026, she will make $349,000. So she made $4,000 less than Caitlin Clark in year 1. She's going to make about $200,000 less than Caitlin Clark in year 2. And then she's eligible not for a max deal the following year, but the super max in 2028 as well. And Aaliyah Boston, same deal. She's now $83,000 last year's salary, eligible for the max this year, Supermax and Supermax. So it'll be interesting. You've got Paige Beckers again. Last year made $78,000, slightly up from what Caitlin Clark made in her initial season, and then her salary jumps to $500,000. So the number 1 pick coming in this year is going to immediately make more money. which is great, obviously, but it'll be interesting to see how that sort of plays out when we've seen Boston, Reese, Clark, and Beckers sort of not make a whole lot of money the first couple years. And then lastly, topic for today is the expansion draft, which is slated to happen between April 1st and April 6th. So today is March the 24th. Next Wednesday is when it's likely that we start seeing at least the structure of what they're going to do here. How many players are going to be able to be held? Who's going to be exposed for the expansion draft? Who are they going to protect? And there's also a coin flip between Portland and Toronto to see who gets the first pick in the expansion draft. And then, of course, the actual draft. So that's all slated to happen between April 1st and April 6th. So essentially next week, we're going to go from no information to the draft being completed, ideally. So by the time I sit down here next week, hopefully we know some of the rules and we can start talking about who's being drafted and who's going where and all that sort of stuff, because that's what I'm most excited about. It's been fun talking the business side of it and the offseason stuff and blah, 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 but getting a little bit bored talking about money and salaries and want to start talking about free agents and contracts and players. So that's what to look forward to next week. I plan to do these every Tuesday, but depending on how this goes, maybe we shuffle that around a little bit. Like if the expansion draft is on this day, I don't want to wait 5 days to do an expansion draft podcast. So maybe we shuffle that around a little bit. And then we'll start getting into more frequent posts as the season starts. Because keep in mind, the plan for this podcast is to have a recording every single morning the day after a Toronto Tempo game, recapping the game. So off-season stuff is fun, but I want to start talking about basketball. So if you enjoy this type of content, if you enjoy talking WNBA, if you enjoy talking Toronto Tempo, feel free to subscribe to the channel, drop a like, tell a friend, and we will see you next week.